Welcome to Football360 Today. Again, our new bite-sized snackable podcast to get your football fix in the space of your commute. David Weiner with you for this Tuesday. And today we're heading across to Europe to help you stay on top of what is going on with World Cup qualifying in UEFA. At Football360, we want to make it easier and more enjoyable to be a football fan. So to do that, I've got a little help today from someone who has been there, done that, at the very top in this very competition and this level. Denmark legend Thomas Sørensen, welcome to Football360. How are you?
Yeah, I'm great. And nothing better than talking about the European qualifiers. I think so many storylines. And again, it's the road to the World Cup, and we've already seen heaps of surprises. And I'm sure they'll keep coming. So let's get cracking.
Let's get cracking out. A busy morning on Tuesday. I'm going to go through the results because that might just set the scene for what we're about to talk about. North Macedonia drew 1-1 with Kazakhstan. Northern Ireland lost 1-0 at home to Germany. Slovenia and Switzerland 0-0. Ukraine and Azerbaijan a 2-1 win to Ukraine. Sweden lost, take the smile off your face, 1-0 to Kosovo. Wales lost 4-2 to Belgium. Slovakia beat Luxembourg 2-0, and it was a 2-2 draw between Iceland and France. We're going to kick off at the top in Group A because that was a really important game for Germany against Northern Ireland.
Oh, massive for Julian Nagelsmann. I think, you know, it hasn't been quite right in the German camp. They obviously lost to Slovakia in the first game, so they've been under pressure, and you know, they haven't been impressive at all. Even this morning, you know, Northern Ireland had some decent chances, had a disallowed goal with VAR. You know, so I know they've been hindered by, you know, some injuries. Musiala has been out, to Stegen, you know, Havertz and others. And yeah, but it's just been too much, you know, experimenting. I think he's used over 50 players in this qualifying, 16 debutants. And it's been changing formation. So there's just been heaps of criticism. You know, in Germany, you know, it happens at Bayern, it happens for the German national team. You get all the Lothar Matthäus and Oliver Bierhoff, all the experts, they come out of the woodwork and give their opinion. And it hasn't been great. So it was really important for them to win this morning. And, you know, it leaves them in a good position because they'll probably end up with that final game at home against Slovakia where it's winner takes all, really. So, you know, that's probably where you want it to be.
Moving on to one of the stories of the qualifiers is the Faroe Islands. 3 wins in a row. The world number 136 could still jag a playoff place. Now, we're talking about it now because that last game was against Croatia. So we've got to sort of celebrate the fairy tale while it's still alive, but a fairy tale that is alive nonetheless.
Oh, yeah, it's an incredible story. And just to set the scene, you know, we're talking about a country that has 50,000 people. You know, hardly any football. They have the national stadium is 6,000. It's got AstroTurf. And I know, you know, they're part of the Danish kingdom too. So a lot of players would probably have come through the Danish system, and then by their heritage have signed up and then played for, but it's still a massive, massive achievement. And for them to, you know, to beat Montenegro 4-0 at home. They beat Czech Republic 2-1. You know, these are big nations that have been at the Euros and been at World Cups. And, you know, look, who knows? You know, this is we've seen Iceland have obviously, you know, a little bit bigger nation, but they have obviously done it in the past and beaten England at a Euros. So who knows? Now they might go and get a result in Croatia. Like it's a 1 game off, and Croatia probably already qualified at that point. So who knows? They might chop and change. And you know, we've seen stranger things in football, and that would be an amazing story because we have already seen Cape Verde this morning, I think, qualified, and then Uzbekistan as well. So you know, we need those storylines when we get to the US next year.
Now, what was it like playing those kind of, with respect, banana skin games in qualifying in Europe? Maybe when you played, you sort of, the margin for error was actually even quite it was tighter because there weren't as many qualifying spots available. What was it like going to these far-flung places and having to take your professional setup and actually adjust to maybe a bit more of a grassroots performance?
In some way it's exciting, but on the other hand, it's horrible because you got nothing, you got nothing to win, everything to lose. The pressure is on. I remember going to Armenia, obviously a long time ago. And, we only had power half of the day. They only switched power on for like, so you're going and the pitch is horrible. There's, sometimes and a lot of times, it's David versus Goliath. So you got an intense atmosphere and you can't play your normal game. You sort of have to, you be physical and try to win the game that way. And that can sometimes be hard, to at least mentally to change your, the whole way you approach a game. So, and I think in Australia as well, whenever I talk to Mark Schwarzer, and they always talk about going, to Thailand and all these Indonesia where it's just not easy, even though you should win.
The opening of the World Cup to a bigger tournament, what do you make of that? Do you like it? Because as you mentioned, it has opened some fantastic fairy tale stories. Is that good for the game, or does that compromise sort of the integrity of the tournament or the difficulty, the pedestal that we put World Cup qualifying on?
You know what? I think it's a wait and see thing. I think we were surprised at the Euros, where, we probably discarded a few nations. Now we saw Georgia, who sort of ended up qualifying late, I think against Greece, and people sort of, and they ended up, obviously they beat Spain, or did they draw? I can't remember, but they definitely took Spain.
Portugal. I was actually at that game.
Oh, Portugal. It was Portugal. Yeah. But also they took Spain all the way. So it's sort of, they might surprise us. And I think again, for the game to spread it out, these nations will be once in a lifetime. And again, it's growing the game. It's going to push money into the game. And we can question if there's going to be a disparity between some of the best nations and obviously Cape Verde and Uzbekistan. But, I think, I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt, and we'll have to evaluate after. But I'm sure it's going to be a great tournament, and again, be great for us with so many storylines, and for these fans to go and have a great experience.
The more, whilst I was initially cynical, the more you see these amazing stories and what it means to these countries that get there for the first time, remembering what it was like for us when we got there for the first time, I'm kind of getting swept up by the idea of it as well. Now, by the way, you don't have any family in the Faroe Islands, do you? The scorer was Thomas Sørensen.
Yeah, sadly,
stick to Denmark, maybe.
Yeah, as I said, there's quite big ties. I think the Faroe Island government is still under the Danish sort of rule in some way. So so I'm sure that there's a fair few Sørensens up there. So it's a very, very common. It's the Smith of the Scandinavian bond between our two nations.
Funny. Well, speaking of Denmark, things are looking good for your boys, but it is a mixed bag for teams in your part of the world, as we alluded to earlier with Sweden's result. They're in big trouble.
Massive trouble. And again, they might get lucky if they can, with the sort of placement in those 4 nation league spots that they could potentially sneak into. But there's just so much turmoil. There was already before these 2 games, players that had, dropped out of the squad because they weren't happy. It's actually, they've got a Danish manager in Jon Thomasen, a player that I played with in the national team for many, many years. And, there's a little bit of a meme in Denmark that he's our secret agent in Sweden to try to spoil their chances. But yeah, I could see him, after this game, these 2 games, they lost to obviously Switzerland the other day and now to Kosovo at home, both games at home. I could see him getting fired, or maybe going himself, because it's not just been the play on the pitch. There's been so much off the field as well leading into this. And, in some way, I've got a little bit, you look over at your biggest rivals and you see them struggling. It's quite nice. But on the other hand, I still root for the Scandinavian sides. fantastic to see Norway with Haaland, on fire. Now I think 12 goals in 6 games. That's unheard of. And obviously beating the quickest player to 50 international goals as well. And they look to almost certain. They just need to beat Estonia at home. And then they're qualified because of their goal difference. So, so it's looking pretty good for Denmark and Norway. As well, we beat Greece and it probably sets up a very mouth-watering tie in Scotland, actually, in the last game where, it could be, again, winner takes all. So there's still something to play for Denmark, at least.
Very interesting Norway at the World Cup with their golden generation of players. That'll be very interesting to see if that happens. The big guns, France, Spain, Portugal, Netherlands, they're all looking like that might be business as usual. Anything in particular caught your eye across those teams? Well, I say that, but France obviously started against Iceland this morning, but they are all in command of their groups.
Yeah, and again, I think, we were talking about Germany earlier, and I think we got the totally opposite in Spain, who just, are so set in the way they're playing. They go into these games with no Lamine Yamal, they've got no Nico Williams, and that's no problem because they play the same way. Pino comes in or Lashabal, it doesn't matter. They've got a philosophy and it's working. They're just a powerhouse and it's impressive to watch. And then you look at France. And we just got to say that Mbappe is still the king. Dembele won the Ballon d'Or, but it's still Captain France that gets the goals. And he picked up a little bit of an injury and didn't play up in Iceland. But you know what? They also look safe. The Dutch look good. Has scored plenty of goals. And Portugal, we saw that great. Late winner from Ruben Neves and obviously him wearing number 21 was a great story at the tribute. We're expecting them to go through and they're delivering. I think there shouldn't be any worries in those nations.
There might be. That was a beautiful moment with Ruben Neves as well, by the way. 91st minute goal in Diogo Jota's 21 jersey. No issues for those nations. Italy. Now you referenced Norway earlier. The collateral damage of Norway's progress will be Italy. They can't miss an expanded World Cup, can they?
Oh, they can. I think going into the playoffs, if that's I would say it's 95% guaranteed that they will. Then you know what they'll probably get the home ties and it'll be stacked in their favor, but it's one-off games and anything can happen. So and we already, as we said before, we're looking at good nations that could potentially, like we've already talked about Sweden. There's other big nations that are still sort of lurking in around. So you never know. But I'll still say that they will qualify. Even though it'll have to be through the playoffs. I know there's heaps of Italians here in Australia that will have everything crossed for that to happen, because also it's a great nation. We need all the great nations at the World Cup, So I'm hoping they pull through.
Major tournaments are always better with Italy there. Belgium, I was going to have in the same category. They've snuck back to top of their group after their win over Wales this morning.
Yeah, no, they look at, they've got a great goal difference as well. And you look at their remaining fixtures, I think they should be good. So there is still a few question marks. Obviously said, we talked about Germany having that last game against Slovakia. So it's not done and dusted. And, again, Denmark as well, are still in that category where it's not over yet. So, there's still plenty to play for. And that's what we want. Like, we don't want we want those last games to matter. And I'm sure we'll have a few of them.
Finally, England haven't played while we record. Maybe by the time you listen to this, they will have played. They could seal their spot at the World Cup. And they last beat Wales 3-0 over the weekend. They play Latvia Wednesday morning, Australian Eastern summertime. But interesting, Thomas Tuchel, no Bellingham, no Foden. There's always something to talk about with England, and that's a show in its own right. But just to wrap up, your thoughts on where they're at under Thomas Tuchel?
I think they're in a good place. I think, and Tuchel has come out and said it, I think quite publicly, that it's about the team. I think, it's a good thing to say that the team is going to carry you through and then the individuals can make the difference. I think, you look at, just Elliot Anderson, striking up someone that you wouldn't expect to be in the England team, striking up a good, I think, partnership with Declan Rice, Morgan Rogers, coming in and from a Villa side, with Watkins as well, who haven't started well in the Premier League, but I think he's taken on the little bit of what Southgate did, that, we're going to build a team, and then, we need the individuals, Harry Kane, as I said, Bellingham, Foden to be those difference makers. But, we saw back in the early 2000s, all the stars couldn't sort of unite and it never materialized. And I think that's where England and Tuchel, I think is doing a good job. I think they look pretty good.
He's a man for big decisions. They are two big decisions.
Yeah, but they'll be there. Come on, Dave. The big players will be there, but
it's just making those decisions keeps them on their toes, but you can just see the hysteria in the news cycle over in England over those selections. He's in control of what he's doing. Yeah,
no, I think again, he's sending us some signals, and again, he's just highlighting that it's team first, and then. And if you don't, I'm not saying that these players haven't agreed to what he's doing, but it's, you got to be able to sacrifice yourself for the team. And then, you can shine and come up with those moments of brilliance, but he's not going to carry anyone. And I think it's a great starting point. So we'll see where they end up come next summer. But, I think they're actually, as I said, in a pretty good place. They look very united and they're playing well.
Awesome stuff, Thomas. A lot to get through in a short amount of time, but you are well across it. Thank you so much for your insights, and we will see which fairy tales come true over the next couple of months in World Cup qualifying. Great to see you. Great to be talking football with you again.
Cheers. I can't wait for that finish.
Also making news today is Cape Verde. Thomas mentioned earlier, qualifying from Africa, their first World Cup, population 500,000. So it is part of the fairy tale of what is going on in the new qualifying for 2026. They joined Morocco, Tunisia, Egypt, Algeria, and Ghana, qualified from Africa so far. All of that is wrapped up on football360.com.au. And if you want this type of information in your inbox, on your way to work in the morning, subscribe to our daily newsletter. You would have got that in your inbox this morning with an update on all the World Cup qualifying results. You can also check out all the scores. They're also on football360.com.au. Wednesday's a big show again because the Socceroos play the US national men's team on Wednesday at midday. So join us for a review of that afterwards. Until then, as always, thanks for listening. Enjoy your football.